You're gonna fill us in on all we need to know about you, and especially like a lot of us don't have a very good background maybe on some of your ancestry. You know, maybe you could start telling us about your great grandfather or your grandfather
As
or
far
whatever.
back as you can remember.
You know, was
Cain and Abel.
Oh, I remember my grandfather used to come down to Utica every winter and stay there for about 4 months. He never went to school. He had to sign his name with an X. He was no dummy either. He was kind of sharp.
hmm
He died at 85 years old.
How old were you? Or how many years difference between the two of you?
Well, at that time I was 10 or 12 years old. He used to come down on Merrick Street,
When he died, you were 12 years old.
maybe 13 or so.
Okay.
Did you ever
Dad,
play?
where did he stay in Utica when he came?
He stayed with my family on Merrick Street.
Oh, when they lived on Barrack Street,
We lived on the third floor. We had a
over
store
the business.
on the first floor, and we lived on the third floor.
Okay. And what's your birthday date? What date were you born on?
August the 18th, 1903.
Okay. Okay. So your grandfather was obviously born. Let's see, 80. He was born long before the Civil War. Then, did he fight in the Civil War or have anything to do with the Civil War?
No,
Did he ever talk to you about the war?
no.
Do you remember him talking to you about anything, Dad?
No, when I knew him, he wasn't very talkative. He was ready to die about this. The whole time I was young.
Mhm.
Are we supposed to jump in where we
How-
went? We're taking turns.
I prefer to kind of keep it track on. What about your grandmother? Do you remember her?
Yeah, I do.
That was his wife?
Yeah.
And what was his name? Your grandfather's name?
John, I think it was.
John Scheidelen?
Yes, I think so.
Uh-huh. And your grandmother's name, what was hers?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth and John, that's interesting.
Yes. Oh, that'd be fun.
Okay, and what do you remember about her? Did she die before your grandfather? Or after?
Well, they were both old when I was just a kid, so I didn't get to know them well at all. And, well, I couldn't describe them too well.
Okay, well these were obviously your grandparents on your father's side.
Yeah.
And what about on your mother's side?
Well, I know them a little bit better. They lived back in West Leiden. They were the last house on the road. And I used to stay there in the summertime sometimes and get fishing out of their creek right side of the house. And they were very good to me. And she was a beautiful person.
What were their names?
Can't think of it.
Graham
That's
and
what we
Graham.
used to call William and Graham, but it's- That's Annie Wyman's parents, right? Annie Wyman was your father's
No,
sister.
his grandmother
Can you
he was
remember the-
talking about is like Uncle Joe's. Clara Goodheinz. He's on the Goodheinz side. Now he's asking.
What was it? What were your grandparents' last name? On your mother's side. What was your mother's maiden name?
Goodheinz, wasn't it, Dan?
Yeah.
Same
So
as yours, Christopher.
these were the Goodheinz grandparents.
Yeah. Goodheinz parents, my grandmother's grandmother's well, she's the mother of my aunt or uncle.
You gotta talk up, he can't even hear you over here.
I can hardly talk.
You can hardly talk.
Dad, that house is where Annie Wyman lived, too, right?
My grandfather lived there. That was the last house on another road. That was back of Fish Creek Road. My grandfather come from the old country and he got in New York and they had a pair of oxen. They drove the oxen. And they got a grant from the state and they built a home up in the woods there. And they had to chop down the trees to make a house in the beginning of the first time. So they had quite a struggle with going. You know, it was strictly woods at first, and then cleared up 100 or so acres and made pasture out of some. And got along.
Were they born in this country?
my grandfather, no,
Where was he born?
Germany.
That was a good Heinz?
Scheidlman.
Uh-huh.
Scheidlman.
Okay, so your grandfather was born in Germany. Grandpa Scheidlman was born in Germany.
Yeah.
Okay, what about Grandpa Goodheinz? Where was he born?
No, he was born in this country.
He was born in this country. Okay. Did your grandfather, did he speak pretty good English, or speak kind of broken English, or?
Well, he spoke English. He was over here since he was about 14 years old, I understand.
Uh-huh. And did he come over here with any brothers and sisters, or?
No, I don't know of any.
So you didn't have any great aunts or uncles or anything?
We had an awful lot of relatives, I don't know who they were.
Mhm. Okay. Well, tell me what you remember about, spending time with your grandfather in West Leiden. You said you went up to the farm?
Well, now you're in the other one. My
Goodheinz,
grandmother
right.
was- They had a farm over in the back of West Leiden and Mohawk Hill, they call it.
Uh-huh.
And they had another person there, an uncle, Albert Goodheinz. He had, well, his children just died, one of them, Herb. You were asking the wrong person this stuff.
Well, I want to know what you remember about being on the farm. When you went to West Leiden, you told me you spent,
I used to go up there in the summertime when I was 8, 9 years old.
right, what do you remember?
Stay there maybe a few weeks every summer.
All right, when you were up there, was it strictly for work, or were you there to
No,
play, basically?
play, we would too. And in the summertime, the kids, not me alone, but 4 or 5 of them, we'd get up in the second tier there and pack down the hay, stomp on it, and walk through it, and keep working it down, moving it.
Was that for the cows below?
Uh,
So you did do some work.
well, I wouldn't go out work, it was play for me. But the other kids had to do it, so I did it with them.
Okay, these are your cousins you had to work?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you have to milk the cows?
I worked one, but I didn't do it again.
You only did it once?
Yeah.
It was too much work, or?
Well, I wasn't doing it well enough.
Uh-huh. Did you get kicked?
Too
Cow
much-
kick you?
He couldn't sit still long enough, what do you mean?
Too much of a hurry to get on to the next one?
I don't know.
This was
Who were the
I
other
wasn't
kids
home.
with you, Dad? Who were the other kids with you there on the
Cousins,
farm?
Well, it was Harold Goodheinz, he was a good friend of mine, and another one, Irv Goodheinz.
They're all
Irv was a little
cousins, aren't
younger
they?
than me. Harold was about my age.
Mm-hmm.
We got along well, we used to go fishing together and have fun.
Weren't they cousins? They were all the good Heinzes, for heaven's sake. What is the matter with you?
Yeah, cousins, right. These are the people he played with on the farm.
Good friend, he's,
Your cousins are gonna be a good friend, right?
So did you look forward to going to the farm every year?
Well, I enjoyed it, but after I grew up a little more, I had to work. It was maybe 10 or 12 years.
10 or 12 years you went to the farm?
Well, I was maybe there for 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
It got to be 10 or so. I had chores to do home too.
Did you have your own room at the farm, or did you have to share a room with?
Oh, I shared with the kids.
Uh-huh. And what time would you get up in the morning there?
Oh, I would say 7 o'clock or so.
Mm-hmm.
But the kids are up before that.
They had to work,
Yeah, the ones that had milk the cows.
and you were on vacation.
Sometimes I'd go out and help them with the cows. That'd be maybe 6 o'clock. We'd be out in the woods getting the cows together.
Uh-huh. Okay. So then, what age did you start working at? What age did you start working at, where you didn't go to the farm anymore?
Oh, my father had a lot of things for me to do.
I know, but what age did you start working, where he started paying you? In other words, at what summer did you have to stay home and work versus go
Well,
to?
when I was 14 years old, I was in my first year of high school, and the war was going on. And my brother Dick, he was 4 years older than I was, and he was doing the work with my father. So then he joined the Navy, enlisted in the Navy, and he came back after a couple of years, and he went back to work and had a very successful team there. He was a real good salesman.
Dick.
Yeah,
He's 4 years older than you?
yeah.
Yeah.
We did things some together, play cards mostly, with other people too. But we had a lot of fun together, we enjoyed each other,
Okay, this was World War One.
yeah.
Uh-huh. What did your brother tell you about his experiences at World War One?
He didn't have much to say about that.
No? Okay. Did he enjoy himself, or? I mean, he was on a ship, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
He
think
didn't want to talk about it?
I don't think he talked much about it at all.
Okay.
Where did you learn
And
to play?
I'm not much of a talker, so I don't, those things bother me much.
Where did you learn to play cards? How'd that start?
Where the whole
I think
family
somebody
plays
must have
cards.
cards when I was a baby or something.
Yes, they did.
In other words, instead of getting a rattle, someone handed you
Well, we used to
52?
play cards up north there when in the nights. We used to play Swick. I don't know how to play it now. Something like
Rummy?
similar to pitch or 7-Up or a game like that. And everybody put a penny in and you get certain numbers and we kick a penny out.
Well,
It's fun.
did you ever play cards with your grandfather?
No. Play cards with my father.
Now, okay, at this time your father was running the grocery store?
No, he didn't have a grocery store. He had a little. We were on Varick Street before I was born, and across the street from the building that we bought. And later, we were on the right-hand side of the street, going up in a small house. And he operated a little business there, and after a few years, he got
What kind of business?
butter and
Produce.
cheese.
Is that building still there today?
No,
Is the home still there?
no,
Both of them are gone?
You mean those buildings are gone?
they're all gone. Worcester was across the road. That's down.
Where, the buildings where you were gone?
On Varick Street,
Yeah, were they gone?
Yes, they're all torn down.
gone now.
Mhm.
One was next to Woody's, and the church took that over and took over this one too.
I'm not talking about that side of the street, I'm talking about the side you were on with the
That
store.
building is torn down now.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so when you got started, then you were selling butter and cheese
Eggs.
and eggs.
To grocery stores?
Well,
did
we
sell
didn't have
butter,
eggs
sold
at first,
eggs.
but after a couple more years, we got into the egg business. And after, well, I'd say 6 or 8 years, we were selling eggs to the other wholesalers. We were buying carloads of eggs every 3 or 4 days. Yeah.
Okay, but before you got that far, were you, when you were 14, were you when your father said that, was it your father's idea that you go to work, or was it your idea?
Well, he didn't object to it at all.
I mean, did you want to go to the farm, or did you want to go to work?
Well, I wanted to work for him, but to get out of school, I got out of school a month early because the war was going on, and if you went to have a farm, they would give you degrees to get into school.
Uh-huh.
So I went on a farm, and we bought potatoes in Marine Midland Bank down on Seneca Street, $5 a bushel, and that was a lot of money. The potatoes are about so big. And then I worked on that farm all summer. Well, it wasn't a very profitable thing. We could get our money back and a few extra.
So you wanted to get out of school early?
I got out about a month early, yeah.
I mean, is that your
Like,
incentive?
Run a farm, yeah.
But you never went back to school after that.
No,
Now, Dad, this farm, is this your father's farm you're talking about?
no, we rented the farm. It was, you go up to Whitesboro and take the road over to get on the road to Marcy. And it was about a mile up the hill there.
No, what these
It
are.
was about 7 miles from our
Oh.
house on Varick Street. And the funny part was, that time, the flats were all flooded in the spring of the year. The roads were barricaded, you couldn't go through, so I drove the horse all the way up there from Varick Street. And I looked at that, just a big lake right over to the, past the Mohawk River and into the Barge Canal.
Where you live?
And the road was, well, after I did it, I was wishing I'd turned back, I should have, but I kept going, and you couldn't see the road because the water was all dirty when it got down there, and it was coming down from other places up above. And I drove the horse all the way through there, and most of the time it was right up to the horse's belly.
Was there a cart behind you?
Car?
No, a cart. Was the horse pulling a cart?
A wagon.
A wagon, I mean.
Wagon.
Yeah.
But I don't know how we got through there, really, it's it was almost a miracle. It was about 1.5 miles of water, and all the time we were there, we couldn't see
The road.
couldn't see the road, just gambled whether it was on the road or not. They got off the ditch a little bit, it'd be the end of the horse, and I imagine me too. But
So you went both ways or just one way? Did you go back this way and back through it? Or just,
well, coming back, they had another section that you could cross from Utica a little better. They went down there and crossed over there.
uh-huh.
That wasn't blocked at that time.
Alright, so you basically started working at age 14 then?
But Dad, I'm wondering, before you lived on Varick Street, did your father still live up north, and he came down each day with a wagon, and, I thought he came down to Utica each day with a wagon and the cheese.
Yeah, he did, but he had a little place there. He just had to stay. And
Oh, he had to stay, you didn't ever live up there?
I was born on Varick Street.
Oh, okay, so he went up there just to stay there to get the cheese and stuff, is that it?
Well, you bring the cheese down here from up there.
Oh, I
I
see.
used to drive a horse from Utica up to West Leiden and get cheese after about maybe 15 or so, like that.
How long would it take you to go from Utica to West Line on a horse?
About 4 hours or 5 hours each way.
What'd you do all the way up there? Suck on a piece of grass? Enjoy the view?
After you got to Ava, the roads were plank roads in the springtime. You couldn't drive them. You could drive a wagon through there, but it's so terrible you couldn't get an automobile through there. So when I was picking up eggs a little later on, maybe 17 or so, I go up there and get eggs every week. And I have to leave the car. I had an Ava, leave that, and then hire a horse and wagon and go to West Leiden. There was 2 stores there that did pretty good business with eggs. So I'd get those. And then later I started going to Lowville in that section.
By car though? You were driving a car then? When you went to Lowville?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My brother was doing it before me, and he had a smash up in Lowville. He had a little Dodge pickup. He had about maybe 25 cases of eggs on it. Showed him where he tipped over the road. The eggs were laying all over the place. And,
I got a picture of that. Have you ever seen it?
yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Was he docked a day's pay for that?
Pardon?
Was he docked a day's pay for that?
I don't think so.
Okay, so you were working full time from 14 on. How many hours a week would you work?
Well, for the first year or so, I imagine making 10 hours a day or so. 5 days, 6 days a week. So.
Oh, 60 hours?
Saturdays, we worked Saturdays too.
So what would you do on your day off? Can you remember?
I didn't have any days off that I know of. Unless I took one off. I took it off a couple times to go fishing. My father loved to fish, and my brother was a great fisherman. And my father used to take me fishing once in a while.
Where at?
In Fish Creek we did most of the time was up in back of well, you go to Constableville, and there's about 10, 12 miles back in there. I can't think of the name of it. It was a place they called it a woods there, and it was the end of the line. And there was campers use it for, lumbermen use it for a camp for quite a few years before that, and they did a lot of lumber from there. That was one time we went fishing, and with 6 of us, I was maybe about 10 years old, and we caught 1,000 fish. And some of the fellows were, maybe they were old drinker, I guess they were old drinkers. Anyways, they wrote it down in the camp there, they cost about 1,000 fish. You were allowed 10 pounds of fish at that time, but you were limited to the numbers you could take. So about 2 days after we come back from the fishing trip, the troopers come down, and found out all about it, how it got to, oh, it was a lot of fun, man. In the end, that cost everybody $50. At that time, that was a lot of money. So there's $300 it cost us to be bragging about the fish. Another thing happened, Clemmy Steinbrecher, he worked with us in Forest for quite a few years. And, well, he was drunk and he started one of the camps afire. So they had one less camp after we left there too.
This is a fishing camp?
Well, it was our lumbering camp, so we used it to stay there overnight. They had several of them there.
Uh-huh.
His father took me fishing once too, after I was married. I don't know where he was. He wanted me to go with him, so I went with him. And he said he was going frogging. You know where we ended up? In a cemetery. There was a pond in the cemetery and it had frogs in it. I can't remember where the cemetery was. We rode. Oh, good Lord. I almost died. I'm sitting in the cemetery and he's frogging.
So that was what you think that was your father's favorite pastime, was fishing?
Fishing frog, he was a great frogger. He caught the biggest frog in the whole area, 3 3/4 pounds, and one of his feet were off, right?
He was still the biggest with missing one of his feet?
He's missing one foot. He had that, he weighed over 4 pounds, but you could just fit him in a gallon can and his head would hang out.
Oh, yuck.
So what would you do with those frogs?
Eat 'em.
He ate him.
Just the legs or the whole thing?
No,
Well, you eat the legs and then up through the sides, front legs, and this one you could eat. The other one's ordinary frog. You couldn't eat. I mean,
my
it wouldn't
sister
be enough
told me I
to
threw a
eat.
frying pan out that he made me cook frogs in once.
We went fishing
I don't
one time
remember
at a
that.
lake right at West
She
Lyden.
said, you said
And,
you're gonna throw that frying pan out, because you're never gonna cook it
Frogs were
again.
hawking all the time. Whenever you go there, there's a lot of them. So we figured, well, we'd go down and get some of them. So about 1 o'clock in the morning one night, went down to that lake and we got about 300 frogs. And a couple of days later, the guy was trying to find the guy that got the frogs to have him arrested.
Cleaned them out?
Well, we didn't do bad at it, nothing. We took most of them.
So
But
you,
you didn't have freezers or anything. What would you do with 300?
Ate 'em.
300 of them?
300, sure, a small fry.
My.
15, 20
it's like
fry
eating
legs.
chicken wings, right?
Huh?
It's like eating
Yeah,
chicken
that's
wings.
what it is, like,
Liz
not
doesn't
as
look
big
too
as
happy
chicken
about
wings
it.
either. And the frogs we were catching then were about so big.
So you've eaten a few frogs in your day.
Oh, yeah. And we've had some pretty good ones too. There's a place in Mud Lake that was between West Lyden and Boonville. There's a little lake in there and the Katoris live there. And I used to stay with them once in a while. They had beautiful, their frogs were about that big. They were selling them for the business, selling frogs, frog legs. So that's the only place around where I knew that there was that kind of big frogs.
Uh-huh.
I went down there a couple of times and caught a few. A lot of fun.
Okay. So, all right, what were you saving your money for when you were 14? Or
I
did you?
didn't have any money.
Well, I thought you were working 60 hours a week. Was that just to? You were still living at home,
I
though.
didn't get any pay then. I needed $1 or $2. My father gave it to me.
Oh, I see. You didn't work for. You were just working for to help your dad out.
You
Uh-huh. Okay. What age did you move out of your house? Did you live with your parents till you got married, or
know. Well, I lived with them till we got married.
till you got married? Okay.
Then we had a house in Yorkville on Main Street. And there was 2 floors on it, so after we got married, we used the 2nd floor, and it worked out quite well for a year or so. And then we wanted to get a house of our own, so I built one on Kelly Ave.
All right. So you got married at 19.
Yeah,
Uh-huh. So you were working hard for 5 years before you got married.
yes.
Uh-huh. All right. So maybe you could tell us how you met Grandma.
We were in a card game.
You won her in a card
You
game?
won her, or you met her?
You lost.
St. Joseph's School,
Yeah, I lost.
where it's now our Catholic Center. They had the 3rd floor. About every week they'd have card playing parties and church.
no, that was for the
parties.
church.
So I was up there and playing, and she and
Your
and
cousin.
Betty Hummel.
Yeah, we were
Hummel.
playing. Betty lived near me, she was
Yeah.
my bridesmaid, yeah.
So that's how I got.
Yeah, but there was a lot of women playing there. Why grandma?
I think his cousin was bound I was gonna meet him.
I know, but I want to know why did he pick you out of all this? There was a lot of women playing cards there, wasn't there?
Yeah, but I'm telling you, it was his cousin wanted me to get
Huh?
acquainted with him.
Mostly older people.
So you thought it was a dream come true that there was a girl your age that liked cards?
Must
I
have
don't
thought
think she
that.
liked cards. I think she come down there just to find me, so that's why I asked.
Well, I heard Grandma's story last year. I want to get your story this year. So
Don't
No,
put
she
words
was
in
never
his
much
mouth.
on
Now let him
cards.
say it.
I am hearing you say it. So anyways,
He'll tell you. I'll
so
tell you.
she came down just to meet you?
Well,
I didn't
you have
hardly
to ask
meet him
her.
that night.
It seems
That's
to
the
me
first
it's
time
all
I
the
saw
time.
Uh-huh.
What would happen? What'd you come down for?
No, I want to know your.
I played cards.
I want to know what you
You
think.
wound up,
I was playing cards with Betty Hamill, and I don't
We
know
got
what
Grandma's
else.
story last year. I want to hear what you think of what happened.
He doesn't say who he
well,
was playing
anyways,
cards with.
I liked her as soon as I saw her and everything worked along.
I mean, was it love at first sight?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but we were together for about a year and we
Second
kept
sight.
getting closer together and liked each other, seemed to.
I was only 16 and he was 17 then.
At what
At
point?
that time, did she tell you that she liked to play cards?
No,
Oh, she let you know right up front she didn't like it.
well, I don't think she ever said she
I didn't say
like it.
anything to
What,
him. I
what,
just
what
met
was the
him.
names of your other girlfriends you had at that time?
Well, when I was in school, I had a couple like Anna Colmer, yeah. They had a store up in Yorkville. She's a nice girl. I liked her. I never got close to her, but the girl I did get really going with was Agnes Creamer. She was a doll.
You can black your ears,
Did
Graham.
she like cards?
We never played cards. I went out with her for a year or so, and I got too tough. But,
So at what point did you start thinking about marriage?
oh, about a couple months before we married, I guess.
Did you talk about it with her first, or you just sprung it on her one night?
No, we started talking about it a few months before we got married.
Uh-huh. And you told her you were going to play cards the rest of your life at that time?
No, I didn't tell her that, but she found it out.
He's not telling you the truth either.
Uh-oh.
Well, I got to remember. I want to hear it the way he remembers it.
Yeah. He makes it up as he goes
You
along.
got a rebuttal later on, Graham.
Off camera.
All right. So you decided. Did you talk
Let's
about?
get even for Agnes Tremor.
Did you talk about? Can you remember like the things you talked about, like how big of a family you're going to have, or I mean, what
They
kind
didn't
of?
talk about things like they do today, I'll tell you.
What did you talk about? You just thought that you've been seeing each other long enough that it was time to get married, or?
Yes, I would say that's the idea.
Okay. So then, you tell us how it went. The proposal. I mean, were you nervous about asking her?
You don't even remember asking.
No, I wasn't nervous.
Right.
Did she ask you?
All right. Let me
Roy?
put it this way. Can you remember where you? Can you remember where you asked her? I mean, were you fishing? Were you playing cards, or was it a romantic?
Was she dummy
Evening.
at the time?
Can you remember where you proposed?
This is a long time ago, he's naming
And how did she say it?
Did you have to talk her into
I
it?
can't remember exactly.
Can't remember.
Was she ready when you were ready?
Yeah, she's agreed.
Are you sure she said yes, though? If you can remember, if you can't remember, are you sure that she said yes?
Yeah, she had to say yes or we wouldn't be married.
Once again,
So can you remember how long of an engagement did you have?
Well, we were going together for a little over a year.
After you asked her? No, once you asked her to marry,
Well, I imagine it was a couple months before.
did you remember? Do you remember buying her a ring for her engagement?
Yeah.
Can you remember what you spent on it?
Yeah, $85
See?
for 2 rings.
Isn't it amazing?
Money.
Isn't it amazing the things you remember?
Yeah, money, he can remember.
It's like 850.
It rattled up. It was
That
like it was
that-
yesterday.
Is that 2 months' salary?
Was that a lot of money? Did you think at the time?
Well, I thought it was plenty.
You still got that ring,
Grandma?
Grandma?
Scar sided with
No.
us, we never had 'em.
I gave up my rings away.
Until I got married, well, about a year when I started going with Hazel, I expected I was going to get married, so then
One.
I told my father, I gotta have
I see
money. So
everybody
I was-
eating them at the show.
I was getting $20 a week then for about a year, and I used to give it to her
All right, thank you.
after we got engaged, and she'd save it, and she did well with it.
What's he saying?
And then after I got making a little more, I said, well, I've got to take care of it. But she did great with handling the money.
I guess I did great. He gave me $25 a week to live on. You know,
Yeah, so I
It's
couldn't
a-
give you 25.
You turned it into 25 grand?
Okay, so
it was 20
when,
maybe at first.
when
I
you got
don't-
married,
know
you were
what I mean?
still working for your dad?
Yeah.
Okay. And how long did that last? That you worked for him?
I worked at it
The
about
thing
48
business.
years.
Huh?
I worked at the business about 48 years.
With your dad?
Well, as long as he was living.
Oh, what year did he pass on?
He was 85.
And how much older was he than you?
How old were you when he died?
Trying to think. Exactly, I don't know, but it's roughly 25 to 27 years older than I am.
Okay.
My mother was a big part of the business too. We lived up on the third floor and there was high ceilings and it was used for business on the first floor, and it was a pretty good jump to get up to the second floor. And my mother used to go up and down, up and down, up and down. All the times that people come, they used to come down to our house when they're sick. And my mother would try to take care of them on the third floor and help my father with the business, which was a lot of work to her. And she killed herself working really.
Would you consider your father successful? I mean, was he?
Well, I'll say he was for what he had nothing. And he guided the business right along. I mean, up until the last 10 years or so.
I mean, did he retire? He never retired from the business?
But, he was paid on the business as long as he lived, yeah.
But,
That was the understanding I had with him after he got past the point of managing things. I said, well, we'll pay you so much a week, as long as you live. And he said, that's fine.
About how old?
$20 a week? It
I
was
think it was about $50 he was getting.
when would you say your business started doing well, that you actually were making any money?
Well, I would say when I was about 17 years old. When I was 14, I used to deliver with a bicycle, and that's how big our business was. On a bike and a little cart on it. I go down Whitesboro Street, there's Jewish people down there, and they had to have sweet butter all the time, so we were selling 4 or 5 Jews sweet butter. And I
Delivered it
did
to their
We
homes?
had Polish customers up in Lincoln Ave in that section, and I was selling them. And after a while, it got so we got a car. That was quite a while after, 3 or 4 years more, I think.
And when did you? I mean, you said when you got married, when you think the business was doing fairly well by then, or did it still take a few more
Well,
years?
we were making the money, yes, at that time. But our trouble was we didn't have any money to develop the thing. We were just working and we were borrowing from the banks. And between you and me, we were borrowing more than we should. The banker had faith in us. And they had a bank right on Varick Street and Columbia Street, the Marine Midland Bank, had a branch there. And this Bovee was the manager of the bank, and well, every time I go over, he sure will fix you up. After a while, I got to the point where the directors from the bank are hounding him. He said, well, I'm at the limit now, you have to do something. So then we incorporated and had a deal with the bank that we would, whatever stock we had, the bank would honor the stock. This is stuff I don't tell people, but the bank, we had an arrangement with the bank that our stock would pay 7%, and the bank would charge 6%, but the bank would keep all the money we took in from selling the stock. So we maybe sold the stock to 20 or 30 people. They borrowed the money from the bank, and the bank charged them 6%, and we paid them 7%, because we couldn't get any more from the bank. They were, you know, we borrowed too much. So that went on for a couple of years, and we began to get on our feet better. And then we started buying the stock back, and we got it all back after a matter of 3 or 4 years.
So what years was that, when was this?
Well,
when
I
was this
think we
all put-
incorporated in 1925. So I was 21 years old then. Wow. So it was quite a struggle. But one of the things that's very confidential is the banker, after we were borrowing so much money and we had so little, he said, well, geez, you gotta give me some security. So we had a public warehouse, licensed warehouse. So he says, give me some receipts for some eggs. She said, you know, we haven't got eggs. Well, he said, I didn't ask you that. Just give me a receipt. So they got a receipt for maybe 200 cases of eggs, and he loaned me money on that. That went on until it got serious. We had too many eggs, the storage wouldn't hold them. But there wasn't any there. It's bad, but we finally got worked out of that.
So when you're about 26, 27, you started kind of turn the corner on a lot of that borrowing, you started paying it off and...
No, we owed the bank at the peak we owed the bank was $80,000, and that's just about 75 more than we had a right to get, but the bank was so good to us that he'd give us money too easy, and well, naturally, that's where the easiest place you can get, so we keep going to the bank and borrowing more, and we got over our head in the monies we owed. But as time went on, we gradually got straightened out. But it was I think one of the things that happened to us in 1932, we had a fire in the building we had there, and we made a few $1,000s on that. 10 or so, I guess. And then another thing happened in the business. We were in the beer business too, but we were in several other businesses. My father was selling hay, selling oats for animals, and then got in the ice business, selling ice. We had an ice house up on Erie Street, right next to Jason Street. And we'd go in the wintertime and go in the Barge Canal and cut the ice and stock it up in the warehouse and sell it in the summertime. I used to do the collecting for 2%, so we're selling to stores. You know, most of it was going to stores. They didn't have machinery then. So I'd go collecting for the ice once a week, and my commission was 2% for collection. And we had a retail business too that an uncle of mine worked at it. He delivered the ice, and I had a cousin too worked at it. They delivered the 25-pound cakes of ice. I think it was 20 cents that they sold it for at that time.
So when you said you got all this borrowing and stuff at the bank, was that before the Depression or during the Depression?
Well, that started, we got too much right off, almost from the beginning. We could borrow 1,000, and we get up to 5, and we get up to 20, and that got, you know, we could use a lot more money if we had it, and I think we could have made money with it too, but we couldn't buy enough stuff to sell, and we kept growing at it, and after a while we got the best of it. It was about 1930 before we really were, I would say, solvent.
So did you lose a lot of sleep between 1925 and 1930?
No.
That didn't bother you that you were that much in the hole?
No, I used to pray about it, but I never, I figured we were going to make it, but it was hard work.
So who was the boss at that point? Between 20, was your dad still?
No, he left everything to me after I was about 16 years old.
You became the boss at 16?
Well, I would say I was a boss, but I did the work, I did the figuring, I did the planning and financing, and
What about your older brother though? How was
he was in the war for that period, for 2 or 3 years.
right? But when he
When
came
he
back,
came back, he started writing and working for the business, and that was better.
Mhm.
We called the thing we had, he was a mixer and I was a fixer. So somebody wanted to sell us something, and they'd be talking with Dick and he'd sell me the idea how much we could sell and so forth. And they come to me, and then I start chiseling. You get the best deals they had. At that time, they didn't have one price. They had, you have to work for it. So I was not too bad at that, I guess.
How much money do you think you chiseled over your lifetime?
Well, I wouldn't call it chiseling, but it's,
Well, that's all right. That's
Chipped away at.
saved yourself.
it's trying to get the
Best
thing
deal.
down so we can make a living selling it.
Right.
That's the idea. I wasn't trying to cheat anybody or anything.
No. And
It's just a
when,
point
when you
that,
think of a chisel, you think of it shaving off wood, kind of
Listen,
One layer.
saving.
nothing he ever bought he didn't do that with, so don't, you go and add it up.
How many millions did Jignoshi? So how did your business do during the Depression?
well, which time of the period you're talking about?
Like the early 30s,
30s?
29 to 30.
That's the
We
depression.
made money. We never lost money in 1 year. Never. We always made a profit. Not a big profit, but we made money. We never lost any money. Really, what made our business grow fast was in 1932 or 3, the Prohibition ended and the beer business came out. We got beer, and fortunately, we found Goebel, but we didn't find it. We had a branch for the beer in Oneida, and Tony Ronaldo was running that branch, and he was doing well. But after he ran it 2 or 3 years, he said, "I'll buy it." And I said, "Okay, you buy it." And so he bought it, but he had a friend in Oneida named Harry. Well, anyways, Harry something.
Not kill it.
He was selling Goebel's beer, and he bought the Goebel's beer from him. And the only thing he did in Oneida was sell beer. He wasn't involved in our other business. Anyways, he was doing well with that. And there was a guy in Utica, Freeman, had the franchise with Goebel's in Utica, and he wasn't doing anything. He wasn't doing anything sensational. So Tony told me that get that you make some money. So I did, and we took the franchise away from. We sold ourselves the idea that we could do a better job, and we did. We were selling it. Well, we didn't bring the Goebel's beer in the warehouse most of the time. We had so many orders, we'd take it out of the car and take it to the customers. And we were selling more than a carload of beer a week from Goebel's. And it was a profitable thing. We did very well.
Wasn't that the first beer that came out in a small bottle?
Yeah.
That's what made it
Goebel's,
big
yeah.
seller.
Did you ever sell any beer during Prohibition?
No.
Never touched the stuff. So what other? You had quite a few beer franchises though.
Oh, we had Pabst Blue Ribbon. We had Standard Brewery out of Rochester. We had Lang's Brewery out of Buffalo. We had Schreiber's Brewery out of Buffalo. And we had
Genesee.
Ellinger in Rome had a little brewery. We bought a little brew from him. And we were buying a Oneida brewery in Utica. And then they went out of business, and I took over that business from them. And
You bought the beer business?
yeah, it didn't work out, so we couldn't make it go. So we ran it for a couple of years and gave up on it.
Well, you had a refrigerator full though, didn't you?
Well, I don't know if we had enough refrigeration for the beer, but it was a good beer, but it took a lot of effort. And my main thing was the grocery business, but I always, looking around for something else. But that was a mistake. We spent quite a bit of time and effort on it. And in the end, we didn't go bankrupt, but we just quit the business, which everybody else was doing too.
What, the beer business?
Yeah, it was, in Utica, there was 4 breweries at that time. That's back in the 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one in Rome. And then he's coming in here from Syracuse and from Rochester and Buffalo and bringing beer in here. And they'd all, we made money on the beer. The beer business was pretty good for us.
Mm-hmm.
But Goebel's beer was a real money maker. We had that lasted for about 4 or 5 years, and other people come out with a small bottle, and this thing here. In the beginning, we bought the beer and sold the bottles for a nickel apiece. And we made about 20 cents a case, which was not bad for $1.20 sale.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the stores in the beginning, and not the stores, but the dealers at the saloons, they were selling it for 10 cents, some of them. Well, Jesus, just went like hotcakes, a bottle of beer for 10 cents. That's what a glass of beer cost.
Mm-hmm.
So, people really took off on it. We had some customers who just, you couldn't bring them enough. We'd take 100 cases a week. We had a lot of it because we couldn't get it from the brewery fast enough. So, a lot of people in Utica made a lot of money, or made a substantial amount of money on Goldbluth beer. That was just the biggest thing around. And then Matt, he got involved in it. He saw how well we were doing. He started a 7-ounce bottle. And that started slowing us down. But the main thing slowed us down was that the cost kept going up. You know, it was too cheap. And the freights were going up at that time. And everything was, and the people in the business were finding they had to pay out more and they had to raise the prices. And after a while, they got so it cost us about 10 cents a bottle. Maybe a matter of 2 years or so. And that slowed it down some.
Mm-hmm.
But
Looking for
it
names.
was a very challenging business.
Okay. Need a hand, Graham?
Larry will help me.
So when you start in,
You gotta help me get
you
it.
said you're about 14 when you started working with your dad?
You know,
Look
How
up.
many,
It's all right.
how many other people were in that same type of business? How many other wholesalers were there
there was 23 wholesalers in Utica.
I'll be all right.
doing the same type of thing?
Well, they had businesses. We were the smallest, and we had the smallest line. We just
You're all
had
right.
a few
Don't worry about
specialties.
I mean, there are 20.
One of the things we got in the canned goods
And that was
business,
his wife that just went by.
and we had a fella come from Rochester, and his name was Miller, and he'd go out with us, and we'd sell canned goods. And, well, we soon had a good business on the canned goods, and we were figured that he was doing it. Well, Dick was a good friend of his, and he had a farm out in Rochester, near Rochester. So he sold Dick the idea that we could make a lot of money if we sold apples. So before you know it, we got in the apple business, and well, we run that for about 4 years. We lost $85,000 on it, and had to quit it. And we took over the farm, and Shy sold it for I think 19,000 or something like that. With all this equipment, we had carriers for the apples and crates and machinery to run them, to grade them. And we had a pretty good operation there, but it was no business for somebody to run unless you do it yourself. We had to depend on somebody 100 miles away, and they couldn't make it. Well, Miller couldn't make it go. He ran that. It was his business, and he used to sell his canned goods off season when he's not working on the farm. So that's how we got to know him, and that's how we got involved in the apple business, and that's how it was. It was really costly, you know, for us to.
But we used to enjoy going out there and getting the cherries.
Yeah.
Bushels
I
of
used to do it,
cherries.
yeah.
Oh my, those were
You
marvelous.
ever figure out how many businesses you've owned or been in?
Well, I know we're in the tire business. We had Powertown Tire.
Why don't you name off the business? You've been in the tire business, the grocery business, the beer business,
Ice business,
ice, apples,
animal business,
Farming
food for the animals, and,
real estate business,
Potatoes.
insurance business.
Home construction.
Here's one you didn't know about, Chris. At the farm there, they raised fox terriers, and they sold those, right, Dad?
Yeah.
You're in the retail business.
Trading stamp business.
Well, they had
Shopping
these
center.
little fox terriers. They used to raise those and sell them. Of course, I had nothing to do with that. I didn't. I maybe paid the bills for it. I don't know.
And we had a fox terrier.
Yeah. But those little dogs are something that are so big, and I'm telling you, they get fighting with each other. They don't let go. They kill the other one. They just don't let go. That's all. And when they were fighting, when you catch them at it, they used to throw them up against the wall to get them apart. That's the only way to get them separated.
They were pretty vicious.
Huh?
They were pretty vicious.
Oh yeah, no, tough.
They were expensive dogs, I remember.
Well, what business did you like the best? That you enjoyed the most?
Well, I enjoyed the grocery business all the time I was in it.
In other words, if you were
It's a
Tom,
challenge.
if you were Tom's age again, what business would you get into?
I wouldn't get in the grocery business.
Okay,
I think I'd follow the Jews. They're the one who taught me how to make money.
which is how?
Well, when I left the grocery business, I was getting $85 a week. And we had a
What year was,
pension.
what year did you leave the grocery business?
About 58.
So you were still working for that company in 1958? How did you buy an island
That was
making?
the basis of it, but about 5 years before that, Dick was a sharp salesman, and he and I were contesting all the time, trying to, outdo the other and see who could do the best. So, for a time, we used to just hear about it. We used to take stuff out of the warehouse for our homes, stuff like that. Well, after a while, it got to a point where, well, I was figuring that Dick lived a little different than I had. It cost more to live. I was living like a pauper. So we made an arrangement that we'd take out so much a week and that was it. You get anything out of the warehouse, you pay for it. Well, that worked out quite well. Then we got to measuring our businesses. So his contention was that I was selling stuff too cheap. Well, then we started figuring who's making the money and the percentage, and when we got all done with it, I was making 11% and he was making 9.5%. So as time went on, he got up to 10.5%. So he was followed. He was followed by.
He wasn't too happy about being behind the
No,
point
he
here.
never complained. He just kept working harder and trying to get a little bit more out of it.
Well, how did you end up? How could you buy an island when you're only making $65 a week?
Well, the island it cost $8,000.
$8,000.
Well, that's a big expense, though, wasn't it? With a
Yeah, well, and from the beginning, I started buying stock when I was when I had the first stock I bought was Niagara Mohawk. I think I had 100 shares, and I think it cost $7 or so.
What year was that, or how old were you then?
I would say I'd be 22 or 23 years old at that time. But I thought that was a good way to save money. So I started on that, and I kept at that. But kept increasing, so we got to a point when I left the business, I had enough stock that was, well, altogether I had $500,000.
in stock.
And that was a goal I set for the business. I'd make $500,000. I turned it over to my brother and Shy. Well, when I left the business, it was in excellent shape. We had bought stock in the business too. We had General Motors, and we had 2 or 3 other companies that had a few $1,000s in each of them. Because at that time, we were getting a surplus. We could spend some money besides paying for groceries. So that was a good feature. It worked out well all the way through my life. But all the time, I'm very thrifty. So when I make $1, I pretty well kept most of it.
Is that what the Jews taught you?
Pardon?
Is that what the Jews taught you? You were saying you were.
No, they taught me afterwards.
What they teach you?
What did they teach
When
you?
I got out of the business, I figured I'm gonna play golf and go fishing and just enjoy myself. Well, I did that for about 6 months, and then I couldn't find anybody to play with during the day. They're busy. You gotta make a living.
So you said back to work.
So I said, well, I gotta do something else. So I started looking around, and I got Jack Moore was our accountant, and he had an account of his, Kowalski, Spike Kowalski, and he and Kowalski and O'Reilly. O'Reilly was in business with Moore and O'Reilly was the name of it. But the 3 of them didn't, well, I shouldn't say it this way, I won't say it. But,
Up top to
they
your
didn't have
hand.
nothing. They had
Squat.
nothing. So I've had $30,000 that I could spare at that time, and I put up $30,000. Spike's younger brother says, if you get $30,000, I get credit for $125,000. So we started buying, we rented the State Street Mill for 5 cents a month.
citizen.
A foot, yeah.
A foot, yeah.
You know, for, almost for nothing.
Yeah, it's cheap.
Well, we're in
60
there
cents a square
about a
foot.
year or so, and the popcorn paid for paid for the rent.
I remember State Street
Yeah.
there.
We were selling popcorn in a big bag for 15 cents. And they're using 100 pounds of popcorn a night.
Wow.
It's just, it's murder. You know, it's a big bag and people come in there and, gee, I think they had their meals there.
I remember having a few meals there.
Yeah, they had a
Popcorn.
counter there.
Oh, it was good. But from that, well, we had close relationships for a year or so, and then it got to the point where they go out to dinner, and they'd have dinner like we used to open Salada. Sadella had a place, I forgot this where it is now. It was downtown. It was a nice place. What happens, and Spike Kowalski, he's got to have double shots of liquor for 2-3 times in a meal. And the other fellows were doing the same. They weren't buying double shots, they were buying singles, and I was. Well, I did that for about 3-4 months, and it was too much for me. I go out of there and I don't feel like doing anything.
This is for lunch?
Yeah, go to lunch, have 3, 4, 5 drinks, and business doesn't mean much then. So I figured, well, I can't go for that. So I stopped going to the lunches, and that sort of divided us up. And then after another while, well, one time I used to get $100 a day for looking for property and building property if necessary, whatever it was. But that was my pay, $100. One day they questioned me. I said, well,
State Street.
how are you earning that $100? The way I got $100, I figured no matter what I did, if I called a telephone once, that's $100, you know, and that's why I charge $100 a day. They start questioning me. I said, well, how are your expenses? Well, let's stop that right away, because they were spending money on booze, so, like mad. So then I began to think, well, maybe it'd be better if I'd take over the real estate part and you run this other business. So as time went on, I started a place in Norwich with $6. I put in 2, and each of the other 4, the Spike Kowalski's brother was involved too, but was a junior partner. So he and his brother each put up $100 and more, put up 100, O'Reilly put up 100. Then I bought the property for $20,000, and I go down to the bank, and my credit was good in the bank. They let me take the money.
How much did it cost to build the center?
It cost about $120,000 or so to build this first part. We only had, at that time, we only had our own store. It was 30,000 feet, 100 by 300.
It's pretty cheap.
But while we're building it, other people come along. We sold the Victory Store space, and we sold Kehoe space in the furniture business, and I got a washing machine operation there, and I had a car wash in there. The car wash was a big profit maker. I never get any profit. I didn't take time to handle it, but I had a fellow handling it. I don't say he cheated me, but he said, that's a good business. He says, I'll buy it. I said, okay, you buy it. So I was glad that he did, and I never really got any fair pay out of the money I put in it, but I sold it, I got my money back, and he did all right. Then I got these guys in Norwich. Some of the fellows that I was working with were well-to-do people. So I got the idea with them, why don't we start a bowling alley? Well, they thought about it, but they didn't think too seriously about it. I had this Jewish guy here in Utica that's running the Palace Bowling Alley, and I said, come up and show us how to run a bowling alley business. Well, it cost me $100 to take them up there, and we had planned a meeting for the people who Norwich, that, you know, the people that could afford to spend money. And we got about 8 people to come up with $10,000 apiece. We figured we had to have $100,000. So I put in 20,000, each of us put in 10. And we started at bowling alley, and we started with 12 lanes. Well, after we got at that, about 2 years, 12 lanes, you couldn't make much money on that when you service it, you know, you had to have a man there all the time. And, well, after a couple of years, we got machinery in there with pin setters. We had quite a time with the kids setting pins for the first couple of years, and then we get automatic equipment. And then we increased the size of the bowling alley to 24 lanes. And we got 24 lanes in there, and the thing paid off much better. So that went along, and well, they had a guy working for us that he was, I think he was honest. He just seemed, I was never satisfied with the work he was producing. I wasn't complaining a lot to everybody else, but I did to him. I said, geez, there's a lot you can do here. You know, we didn't get any groups coming in or anything, but we had the alleys pretty well filled. Like the way the other bowling alleys were doing, they'd have special hours for the kids and afternoons for grown-ups, and they took in more dollars that way. You know? But this guy didn't have, I guess, ambition enough to do it, or that's what I felt. And as time went along, we had Kehoe, who had 6,000 feet, and he was willing to buy a property. He was willing to start a place. He felt that he had to be outside of the shopping center, but near it. So we owned a property across the road, and I said, well, I'll build you a property over there, and I'll sell it to you after you want to buy it, if you want to buy it. So I built the building for him, and he used it for about 3 or 4 years, and he says, well, how much? We had an understanding. I saw it for 15% over cost. So that's the way I sold the building, and I got the money, and I got 15% over the cost. And in the cost, I figured $12,000 for the lot it was on, which, you know, we bought the whole farm for $20,000. It was just 300 some odd acres. So everything seemed to make money. So it was a challenge all the time, but very interesting. And from there, then I sold the property after a while to Castle 11, and while they were going to set the world afire, we had a whole hillside there with hundreds of acres of land right on the hillside. The property was about 600 or 700 feet long, and sloped up like that. Great place to rebuild it, but kind of steep, you know. So they never did get into that, but they did put a Burger King in there afterwards, and they put it on my property. And I had a mortgage on the property. Well, after a while, they had this property over in Oneida that was an expense. We just lost a bit of money on it. And I had Shiloh's put a grocery store there, and they lost money on it. And Oneida, we were too far out, but they selected the lot. And we paid $26,000 for the lot and put up a 42,000 square foot building. The 30,000 was for the food, for family market, and 12,000 was for Shiloh. Well, I overstepped myself with Shiloh, and we couldn't make it go. And they didn't have too much luck with that store either. But after a while, the family bargain center began to fall apart. They were getting too big for their shoes. They got down in New York, and they bought Tiffany's, and they bought. Then they'd go to Japan and try to buy out half of Japan, it seemed to me. And before you know it, we began to get into financial trouble. Before, when we were running this, we opened 27 stores, all were 35, 40,000 feet. And I built 4 of them myself, and the others, some were built, and I think that's all that we built ourselves was 4. But I made money on those, and as the time went on, I started to tell you that we begin to get some misunderstandings on things. And they, well, oh, you want to sell this and I'll buy one. Well, finally we traded. I give my stock for the bargain center. I give a certain amount of it to the bargain center for their interest. But all they put in was $100 a piece. I paid each of the three of them $10,000 cash and about $30,000 worth of stock, which is $40,000 for $100. That's all they put in it. And they didn't know anything about what was going on. So that worked out very well for them, and it worked out all right for me too, because I started making more money on it. When I controlled the center all entirely, I didn't have to ask anybody. I did what I want to, and it made money.
What percentage of the Foodland stores did you own?
I didn't know any of it.
Or what was the?
I didn't personally know.
You had stock in it?
No, I built the store where Chinatri is now, where he was. And now he's got a better store right next to it. But I built that property, and we had Chinatri moved in there. Well, I guess we had a Foodland store first. Anyway, finally Chinatri bought the property, and I sold it to him cheap because he was a customer. And actually, they tried to hang me down, but I put a low price on it, and they accepted that for a price tag.
Okay, well, once again, if you were Tom's age, which business would you get into?
Well,
Because Tom's thinking about what to get into.
Which
I've always thought that a dentist was a beautiful business to be in myself. Dentist is a
That's the
business
last thing I expected you to
you
hear.
can knock off a day or a week, and you just tell the people you're filled, you can't take any customers. Where the doctors, they got babies coming all the time, and they gotta have attention. And I always thought that the dentist was a good thing. And I think it has something to do with Ira Doxter's son. I was telling that to him too, and I think he worked with his son, and his son got in the dentist business.
Right.
And now his children are in the business, so it's a generation after generation that
So you'd become a dentist if you were Tom's age?
I would think it's an easy way to make money and have some satisfaction and privacy in your life.
Mhm.
With a doctor, you have very little privacy. They call you 2 o'clock in the morning or anytime, and you're supposed to be there. The dentist, you're on a vacation, but they don't know that. You're just busy with somebody else.
So in other words, you'd be vacationing more than if you were Tom's age?
Oh, I figured I wouldn't work like that.
You'd be more like Chris?
When I want to go away, I go away.
Kind of like the way Chris does
Well,
now?
how come you're still working so hard?
Well, that's what I was thinking. Afterwards.
Do you realize that this Tom O'Reilly that he's talking about lives across the street from him? He lives on the corner of Genesee and the Parkway.
Which business that you were in do you think was most financially profitable for you?
Question about that. Family bargain centers.
How did the Family Bargain Center get bought by Cartier? That always,
That's the one he said in
I
the
never
20
understood
store?
just how that happened.
Well, we were growing fast. We were making money right along, and just stretching out, just like Scheidelman was doing. But we quit before it got too bad. But they
How much interest did you have in the Family Bargain Center?
I have 50% interest in the beginning. Then, as the thing went along, I could see O'Reilly and Moore. They were the accountants, and I figured that if I give them some of my stock, it would make a big difference in the operation. But that didn't work out. They bought the stock from me for what I paid for it after everybody else knew it went way out. And then Spike had the other 50%, and they were buddies all the time, and drinking together all the time. And I was on the outside after that, and it didn't work out the way I was thinking it should work out. But I still did well. I made about $3 million on Family Bargain Centers.
And that was mostly when they went public? Is that how you
Yeah,
made the
that's
most
where
money?
we sold the stock for $17 a share. And while we were there in New York for about 3 days, consummating the transaction. And the stock went up to 23 before we signed to sell it. So, I mean,
So the most you ever owned in the Family Bargain Center was 50%?
yeah.
Okay.
Now, which job that you actually did you enjoy the most? Which did you enjoy the most of all the things you worked on?
I enjoyed the grocery
What
business.
was the one you enjoyed the most?
Yes.
What did you enjoy the most about that? Was it just the negotiating, or was it the?
Well, it was a challenge all the time, and I had a lot of foolish ideas. Some of them worked, some didn't. I ran multiple management business with 60 kids with me, and some of them didn't know enough to come out of the rain. But anyways, they all went to the meetings. Once a week we had a meeting at, they started at 4:45, and their time put at 5 o'clock, so we took 15 minutes of their time, but a lot of times their meetings lasted till 5:30.
But Dad, who were these kids? They weren't people that worked for Shiloh, were
Pardon?
they? Who were these kids? I don't remember
Grocers.
this.
Young people, they were all
Grocers?
young people
Grocers? Are you talking about
working for us in the warehouse.
in the warehouse people?
We had 7 of them when the war started. 7 of them went to service, and when they come back, 7 of them come back to us. So I was kind of proud of that. They were chased all over the world, going for 2, 3, 4 years, some of them, and every one of them came back to work for us.
That was World War II.
Yeah.
Dad, do you want to tell them about your brother Dick, how he died, and that was, what, 1935?
We were looking for a bigger warehouse when we were on Berry Street. And we were looking at some property up on Oriskany Street where the Erie Canal was. And there was a railroad track there. We felt with a railroad track and a siding, we could have a much reduced cost of doing business. So he was looking at a building down on Genesee and Broad Street to get some of the heavy lumber out of it. And, while he was there, the building collapsed and killed him. And that's gone down in evaporation for a while. I had to run it alone then, but we had a good team. We worked together well.
It was your dad alive then?
Oh, yeah.
That was the
Your
proud.
mother.
It began about that time. He didn't go out and sell anything. He'd go in these beer joints and drink beer and maybe sell 10 cases of beer, but it cost him more to
He was
sell it
doing
than
the
we
mixing.
make on it.
Your
So
mother
they
He
were
died
doing
about,
enjoyed life, though. He liked to drink a little.
your mother died about the same time Dick did, didn't she?
She died she was 59 years old. Yeah, shortly after that.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been quite a shock when your brother died.
Well, it was strange, but I struggled through it, and at that time my father didn't do anything about managing the business. He was just there. And he liked to feel as though he was boss once in a while too, but he really didn't have an effect on it. So,
I think one of the interesting things you did when you had the grocery business is you went out and got private brand labels. I still remember going out to Chicago and talking to the fellow about Blue Bunny brand. They took us to this big hotel, we had dinner, and we were discussing that.
I used to walk with
Yeah.
shoes on, is there some? I got
well, we
slippers
had
on.
that, and we had Pleasing. We bought
Yeah,
a franchise with Pleasing. That's something like IGA or Great American Stores. And that worked well.
Were you responsible for bringing Foodland into this
I
area?
hope you got your
Yeah.
snowshoes.
How so? How'd that work?
Well, they had a franchise, and we decided we needed something to develop our business better. So we put Foodland, and that was really the way I looked at it. That's what we had to have if we're going to be successful. A lot of big stores that would produce a lot of business. Like these 2 Chinatris now in Utica, they would represent like a Foodland, but they never got into it. But we needed big people to sell a lot of volume to.
So were these
Where the
independent?
chain stores were coming in and selling for cash, where the retail grocers at that time were selling for credit and delivery, and it was just too expensive.
So these were independent stores that switched over to the Foodland name.
Well,
Most of them.
the independent stores, most of them went out of business. I think I don't want to take credit for it, but we started in after we got going. We started cash and carry. Well, at that time, I knew our business was not going to be producing anything because we were selling, and it cost us 13% to operate, and we were selling for 15%. We needed 2% to keep for ourselves, which we did. We kept that. And it worked out all right as far as we're concerned, but the business, we kept losing money in grocery stores. They closed up one right after another.
Because it wasn't cash.
They couldn't make a living. Their costs were too high, and their competition was too heavy.
So the Foodland stores, did they buy everything from you?
Oh, yeah, we created the Foodland stores.
Oh.
But the thing of it was that I could see on the handwriting on the wall that the independent store was not going to be able to survive because we were selling as cheap as anybody else, and it was too high. They pay that, they wouldn't have enough left to make a profit and stay in business. So I decided we'd go cash and carry, and one day I just took off. I said, I'm going to be gone for a month, but our business today is cash and carry. And I shouldn't have done that, but I left it. I figured it was going to be too hard to answer all the questions. So I was thinking about it. I talked about it a little bit, but anyways, then I decided the only chance we got to stay in business is run a cash business. And we reduced, in the matter of 2 years, we reduced our cost of doing business from 13 cents to 3.5%. That's 9.5%.
So you didn't give anybody credit after that?
Pardon?
You never gave anybody credit? You just cut everybody off?
Well, we had a cash business, but a few people, like at that time, Chinatris, they were as good as gold at that time.
Okay.
They paid once a week, but generally we got the money right away, and very little complaints. We had checks sometimes that thick, all signed, and no amounts in there. We had one customer down in Little Falls who was a very good customer, but he never understood what we're doing. I was down there one day and I says, how's everything going? He says, good, good. Well, I see checks sticking out of his pocket. I said, oh, what are those for? He says, well, every time I get an order, I check it and check it with the bank and make sure it's okay. Because he sent a check, maybe it was $1,000 or so. And well, they could not figure out how we did it. And it worked out, and we never had anybody say they got stung on it or we made a mistake after we sent a bill. We sent out a lot of, we sent along a bill with it, and they know how much it was and how much they bought. But that was our lifesaver. We couldn't have survived in the grocery. We were one of 23, and after we started the cash and carry, one right after another, we bought out these other companies, 22 of them. To my knowledge, there's hardly any of them that dispose of their business finally through us. We go down, we give them a fair price for about what it costs, 2-3% for ourselves.
How about Ave Italiano? Were they a competitor? Ave Italiano, were they a competitor of yours at the
They
time?
were, but they were buyers from us too. They were nice people.
So they're the only ones that's still standing, but they had to go
Well,
into
they
different...
never had a grocery business.
Oh, they were-
We're talking about grocery businesses.
Oh, that's what I mean, they were in a different
They
kind
were
of...
specializing in Italian stuff and cheeses and stuff like that.
Okay.
Did you ever want any of your kids to go into business with you? I mean, to take over your business?
Well, no, I had Betty working there for a while. She was doing a good job. And Shy, unfortunately, he got drinking. He was a good beer salesman, but he was drinking too much beer himself. So after a while, I took him out of that job and put him inside the office. Well, by that time, I guess it was pretty late. He kept drinking. I argued with him, smashed up 3 automobiles. Lucky he's living. But he survived that. He and Johnny ran the business, and well, Johnny couldn't stand it after a while either. He wasn't there. He wasn't doing his share at all. So salesmen come in, they go up to Harts Hill and have dinner, and that's the end of him. This is like this other group. Go and have a few drinks and then hell in the business for that day anyway. Start in the next day again a little bit.
And Ron had no desire to get in the business? Ronnie?
I never asked him.
Hmm.
No.
I want to ask you, who got you the idea of cash and carry?
I copied that from people in Syracuse.
What did your wife say to you? We were downtown one night. We went to the movies, and you said, that woman. You said, I know that woman. I said, she had a fur coat. And you said, yes, she owes us $500. Pretty somebody else. He said, oh, I know him. Oh, Lord, he owes us a couple hundred. It's only 3 people at night, and I said to you,
They all had big coats on?
they all
Would
had,
you be-
they all owed money. And I said, you know what you gotta do? You gotta do like the Boston store, cash and carry. So I was the first one, if I ever told anybody, I told you. I said, they have cash and carry,
Would you like
and
to
they
revise
survived.
your story?
Uh-huh.
Would you like to clarify your story now?
No, that's pretty well true.
Would you like to fork over half your income over to an hour?
But I can see the handwriting on the wall.
Yeah.
There's no use going on because we make $1, we lose it in a bad account. And it wasn't their fault. They just couldn't meet competition.
We didn't have enough money to go to the
And
movies.
through what
Got
we
this
did,
beautiful
we
fur-
kept about.
Oh, boy, didn't they owe all
Today,
that money?
our
Honestly,
business in the cash and carry
cut that out.
is more profitable in our little department than the
Than the
big
whole-
one.
whole
Because
store.
all the people that are left now, they're buying from us. And Flickinger come down from Syracuse and started a place like that. And he stayed there about 5 years and we knocked him out. I mean, you know, how come, I don't know, but they're big people. But they didn't make any more money on it. Even they come down there and they wasted their money.
How long ago was that, Dad, that Flickinger came down?
That's about, well, that started as soon as we started the cash and carry. We
Oh.
had some way to take care of small customers.
Mm-hmm.
So the small customers that are left now, practically every one of them, even taverns buy from us, and we get quite a good business over there, about $50,000 a week. And that's just for little, very small businesses. So
You said earlier that one of your goals had been to retire with $500,000 or something.
that's what I did. Yeah, I got $500,000.
Do you remember having any other goals along the way?
No, at that time I figured that's all I'm going to need. $500,000 at that time was a rather substantial amount of money, and with the securities I had, I thought I could live on that.
Do you ever have any family goals?
What do you mean by family goals?
Oh, you wanted your family to be a certain type of, raise them a certain type of way, or
Have a certain number of kids, or have them go to college,
Really,
or
when my kids
have them be
were
good
growing up,
Catholics, or whatever?
I was so busy trying to make a living that I didn't know them well enough.
Your family.
Hazel took good care of the kids, and she
Good, what grand?
got involved with them more than I, but I love the kids, but they just never took time to be with them enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another mistake I made.
Did you have any other kind of goals?
or did you have any goals like to put those other people out of business, or to be the
No, I just wanted to
Just-
do a good job, and through doing that, the others automatically closed. We had big people like Griffin and Hoxie and Field and Start and Austin and Nichols. Austin Nichols owned that building down on Whitesboro Street, that big concrete building right around, well, almost to the end of Whitesboro Street. But they had a railroad siding, and they had a lot of space there. And they were a big company. And I was figuring we're gonna buy that building, but never did get to it, other than a good place for a warehouse, except for the location and the parking around. There's no parking to speak of there.
what would you say your number? I mean, that you did so well and all these other people weren't. What was the number one reason do you think for your success?
Well, I think I worked 2 days every day and 1 day's pay I saved. Well, that's the way I look at it. I think
You just
if
outworked
it's half
them.
as hard. I might have still made a living, but if I put in extra effort for all that time, I kept adding to my net worth.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours a day do you work normally? What,
I was 16.
every day?
Wow.
You down to about
Oh.
10 now?
You tell him about the time you went to Little Falls and you rap on the door and the man comes to the window in his nightshirt. He says, "Oh, that's Leroy."
That was every Monday morning.
Yeah.
Dad would take me to work. We'd leave the house at 5 o'clock. One day we got up and there was a flat tire and he says, "You studied about cars, you changed the tire, I got work to do." Right?
You work 16 hours every day, you're saying?
I averaged, yeah. I worked Sundays and Saturdays too, but not 16 hours on those days.
How many hours a week would you average?
I would say 85 to 90 hours a week.
For how many years?
This he still spends all day in the bedroom
It's
figuring.
almost 50 years.
That's what
50
Grandma's saying. How
years.
many hours a day
It's
do you think
much
you work
longer
now?
than that, as far as I know.
Well-
I didn't even see you.
she hounds me on that, but actually, having a little money is like having a big family. I mean, you gotta watch over every one of them, see what they're doing.
Yeah,
how
but we
they're
never
coming.
did anything, we never went anywhere, we could
I
never
know we
spend any
didn't.
money.
Hey, you were out that day with, you saw those people in the jacket. You know, you were out that day, you came up with the idea about, cash and carry.
Those people that owed you the money, they had the coats on,
You
fur
were out,
coats.
Oh,
you were
yeah.
out someplace.
I was conscious of it every minute, don't worry. Oh, boy.
So if you had to do over again, would you still work 90 hours a week?
Not with this wife, he wouldn't.
That's it, I couldn't make it go, and I'd find something else. It wasn't worth it, it was too much.
So what
I
would,
lost all the kids from it, there's no question about it.
Not
I
this
had a normal life, and I could properly go out with my kids and visit with them, like fish with me. My father fished with me for 4 or 5 years. And
Just
he
wanted to
enjoyed it
fish with you
greatly,
when you
and
was
I
married.
enjoyed it.
You think
I
you're,
never did that with my own kids. I mean, I was just felt as though I didn't have time.
you think if you were to live life over, you'd live more like Chris and work a couple hours a week and
Yeah,
And
I'd
live in a
like
nice
that.
house.
That'd be great. In fact, that's what I thought I was going to do when I retired from the grocery business. Was just quit, period, and go enjoy myself. But it didn't work out that way.
No, 'cause
Who
he
do you
wouldn't-
think your role model was that you followed? Your father always lived a life, and he took life easy, enjoyed life, and Johnny
my
Johnny
father-
enjoyed life, and you kept your
Dick
nose
was
to the
more like that,
grindstone
too.
all the time. Who were you trying to be like, or what was it that was driving you to?
My father enjoyed life, but he didn't work easy. He worked hard. He worked harder than I did. He used to get up in the morning at 4 o'clock, feed the horses, go back to bed or get cleaned up, and go take the horses and go down to as far as Little Falls selling stuff from Utica. And that's about 25 miles. That's 50 miles. Now if the horse goes 5 miles an hour, that's 10 hours. And he used to do that, and he was successful at it, but then he'd go to Rome the next time. You know, that Little Falls to Rome, that's about the territory he had.
Leroy,
But he worked hard.
we better quit. Charlene is going over to see her people today.
that's all right, we got a couple. 10 more minutes.
We don't.
So anybody else got any questions of Grandpa?
It's gonna take him 10 minutes to get out of here.
Well, I think one question I was kind of shocked about, and this happened not too long ago. When you come out and started this foundation or something, Hazel said, and I certainly trust her and believe her, and she said over and over again that she had no idea that you had money.
That's
Now, how did you work this as you went along? Like,
I
how
never
could
talked
you,
with people
how could you
about
be
money.
making all this money and she doesn't know anything about
He
it?
didn't give
I
me any.
wasn't trying to make a business of making money, but I had to have a place to put the money I had, and I kept buying securities, and it worked out very well. I didn't make a lot of noise about it.
Well, how come she didn't know?
He took care of the
Benefit
income
talked
tax,
about it.
and
I
he takes
get in an
care of my
argument
stuff
about
too,
what I'm gonna
so he
buy.
knows
No,
what
but
I got.
What I'm getting at is
She
she
bought a coat.
She said that she
That's the
missed
truth.
a lot of things in life, that she couldn't take a vacation, and she couldn't do a lot of things because she didn't know that you had this kind of money.
It's the truth.
Now, I mean, what was wrong there? Something was wrong.
how much
Well,
did
he
you,
that
never
happened?
told me he had 50 cents. He-
No,
I like I
That's
told
why I
you.
wanna hear his reasoning here.
All right, hear it if you can.
You knew I had 50 cents anyway.
I don't know if I know that. He goes to the store now and he said, "Oh, I forgot my wallet. Have you got any money with you?"
They all tell the same truth.
What was your question, Jack?
Well, I'm just wondering how that's a mystery to me, how that could have happened.
It's a mystery to me
It
too.
wouldn't be so bad if you had $50,000 or something like that, but when you got several million, and she says that she implied that she didn't have the ordinary expected things out of life.
Wait a second, at the same time, she had a house in
We're
Florida.
gonna let them answer
Well,
this.
I mean, for 30 years, they had 2 houses, they've had a house and a lake.
Thomas,
I
that's
mean,
your answer.
Well, I'm trying to, well, I'm
what
saying,
their reason
I'd like to
Would
know
you
what
let me
Grandma's
answer that?
talking about. He already answered it.
Grandma bought a lot of that property herself.
Well,
Thank
when
you.
I was buying investments, I didn't feel as though I wanted to buy it from somebody else tell me about it unless I went to a professional. So for that purpose, when I bought stock, sometimes I didn't tell her, cause she would say, no, don't do that.
You wouldn't say anything like
Sometimes she
that,
was
would you?
right when she found out, but, generally, it worked out very well.
Yeah, for him.
Well, I don't know.
Well, let me ask this, did you know how much money Grandma had?
Yeah,
Sure he does the
To
income
the penny,
tax.
huh?
I gave her most of it, but
Oh, you
she
gave
made
me
a lot
most
of
of
it
it.
with dolls, and she's very successful.
You gave me
And
most
so
of it, you
dolls.
didn't give me anything, what do you mean? The last few years, you give me Christmas presents, you give me less than you give out to anybody else. So what are you telling me you gave me? I had to go to work so I'd have some money, that's how I got in the doll business, I never had any money. You wanna know the
When we
gospel
had a place
truth?
in Florida,
What?
when we had our place in Florida, I paid $19,000 for it and sold it for 42.
What house?
The last house we had in Florida, in the water there.
Oh, you're not, you don't know what you're talking about, those figures aren't anywhere near right.
Well, they are exactly
Oh,
right.
no, they're
You talking
not
about the, you
right.
talking about the double wide home, or the one before that?
Yeah,
Oh, he's talking about the mobile home.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh,
Yeah,
That
but-
time, I made about 23,000, and at that time I gave Hazel a stock worth 25,000 for her share, so I made nothing. I give it all to her.
So she had enough to go on vacation if she
what
wanted to.
stock did you give me?
Wallkill, Village of Wallkill.
Bond? Was it a bond or stock?
It was about mutual.
Yeah, when you first went to Florida to attempt to retire, how many holes of golf did you play a day?
Well, Shy and I played
you leaving?
72
Played every
holes
day.
one day in
Never heard about this, huh?
They know enough to get ready to go home.
I play golf 4 or 5 days a week.
That beauty.
Tried to.
The way I remember that story is that you would get up, you'd go to mass in the morning, you'd go out and you'd play about 54 holes of golf, then you'd go home and go to bed. And one week you ran into rain week. And so you got a hold of a real estate salesman, you went out and bought what, 17 houses?
23.
You were off the board that
And
week.
the real estate guy sits in front and says, yeah, I'm sitting there, and he's still looking at the house about 5 minutes.
Now, how did you think he bought those 23 houses, Grandma?
Did you have a clue
Just
at
like
that point?
crazy, just,
Oh,
Where'd you think he had the
it's
money from?
raining, it's the worst day it was
I
today.
mean,
You didn't think
kinda
he had
had
money,
an
he went
idea
out and bought
he had money
23
about
single-family
23
homes in one day.
I know,
Like a
I
real
thought he was
estate
off
job
his
like
rocker,
that.
because he didn't, why they
Can you
were
imagine that
dumpy
real estate
There's
houses.
something wrong with
They
this
were
story.
cheap
and he
houses.
paid
That's what-
cash.
He got
But you didn't pay
mortgages
cash
on-
for those houses?
He got a mortgage.
You know, I had to pay deposits on all of them. Some had mortgage, and I just take over on a mortgage.
Did you make that real estate agent's day?
He made
Life
He said
sale of
he
the
was an
year.
old guy, he sits in the front
Yeah,
seat,
I
and he
made
said,
money, but
No,
I
I'm
didn't
saying
know
that
he was gonna
the
do
real
all
estate agent
this."
ever, because I don't think any real estate agent in our office ever met anybody like that.
They'd like to, huh?
Do you still get
well,
Christmas
it
cards
was a-
from him?
It was a bad time. Business was
This is
terrible.
one guy.
Except for that real estate agent.
Yes, I know, he
Built
knows
these
they're all
houses,
painted
and
like
after a
this,
while,
so
they
you know,
couldn't
like
sell
him
them,
and
and
he's got a
they had
great
to do
big
the best they
leopard,
could.
and a vicious leopard, painted all across the front of the house. A great big leopard, about this wide. and this
Kind
big.
of.
Grandpa to the house?
Anybody else got any
And
questions
you
for
don't go in
Grandpa?
the living room, he's got a tiger
very
or
nice,
something. I
Grandpa.
said, "Hey,
Yes,
I
that
must
was
have been
good,
afraid of
Dad,
something."
very good.
Well, what-
Learn some new
That's the way
things.
they use the houses, then we had
You
to
know,
sell
some of
them
the stuff I
afterwards.
said,
You
I
can
hope you
imagine.
I think you've got a life to be proud of,
Proud
Leroy.
of
Surely
it.
you.
I think you have a life to
A
be
window,
proud of.
he's gonna put a door on, he never finishes the door.
We're all very proud of you, we can tell you that.
Spend all that on Grandma.
You didn't get from Leroy the most important part, and
We
that
know.
is his activities in the church.
We hear that every
That's
day
right.
though.
No, we don't. You
So-
don't know how he got started in the church. You don't
Yes,
know the
I do.
story about Peter
Jack
Carr.
Carr, we've heard that story.
You don't want that for posterity. I think that's the
Charlene wants
most
to go and
important.
visit her people. And
This is
we're
tape
taking
one,
a
there's gonna be a tape two for Grandma and Grandpa.
If you could give one bit of advice to Tom, what would it be?
Join the church.
Don't work so hard.
If you could give one
Well,
bit of
business
advice
advice
to
to Larry.
Tom,
Business.
what would it be?
Why we pick on
Business.
Tom?
He's the youngest.
Business advice.
Something that you would want to hear, I feel you should get involved in the
He comes home, he's all elated, you
Because
kids
in-
told him the other day
in
you're
our
going to
life, in
church.
100 years,
Because I
it's
said,
just
you
like
know
a
that's April Fool's
drop
Day?
of water in the ocean.
He comes home, he said,
If you
oh,
get
it's
to
so
heaven,
lovely,
it's
the whole
eternity.
family's going together, isn't
It
that
never
nice?
ends.
Yeah.
If you don't get to heaven, it's hell. It's hell. Sometimes it's hell on earth too. That's what I would, if I had my choice to say. The main thing we're here for is to get to heaven. That's the only thing that counts. No matter what you say, money doesn't mean a thing. And like Larry was saying, they're the 9 richest people that he knew of. 3 of them committed suicide, 2 were in asylum, 1 was in prison.
And you're the other one.
No, I'm not the other one. Anyways, each one of those 9 people with billions of dollars, they lost their mind through it. And they lost God. They lost everything.
Well, you remember
And
that
that was
well.
a
So did Trump. He lost his wife.
Yeah, but he got a new girl.
Yeah.
Money,
Look at the
money
trade.
doesn't mean a thing. That's immaterial. Money never meant anything much to me, except that I want to pay my bills. And
Well, you want to get
as
the
far as
$500,000.
making money, it just came automatically. I worked hard and I kept having ideas that seemed to work. So, in our business, I think one of the things that made it more successful was I depended on everybody, like Stella Bignac. She worked for us 46 years. She knew more about the insides of that business after a while than I did. And for 3 years she worked for us. Every time I look, I said, I gotta get rid of you. She didn't get the stuff quick at all, but when she got it, I'm telling you, she knew it, period.
When I went to
She
work
was a
there,
very
she
wonderful
knew
person.
all the customers' names in her head. She knew all their addresses in her head. She knew all the telephone numbers. Nothing was written down. I said, oh, Lord, if anything happens to you, we're gonna
It's
get
kind of like
family."
Darvale at the
So
business,
we
isn't
got-
it?
So we got all, she'd remember invoice numbers and discounts, and she did the most amazing things. She had the most amazing memory of anyone I've ever known.
I used to check all the bills that we're paying, and it got to a point where I couldn't do all that stuff. So after maybe 5 years before I got out of the business, I left it. She did everything. She'd make out the checks. She didn't sign them. I signed them, but that's all I knew about it.
My battery.
On the things left.
Did you enjoy yourself?
No,
It's more than you've had to talk about yourself in 50
I
years.
don't like to talk about myself.
Well, we enjoy hearing it. You know, if we ever have kids, they want to know what their great-grandfather's like. Larry's kids, if they didn't want to watch it today, but maybe 10 years from now they might want to watch it. Yeah. Cried the queen. I did.
I didn't give enough attention to them. I didn't know them enough.
We haven't lost them.
But on the other hand, you just told me today that you helped out 500 families.
If you look at it that way.
Well, that's the way you should
About
look at
every
it.
retail store in Utica now wouldn't be there if we didn't get
That's
the
right.
cash and carry.
So that's,
Because this is a salvation for them. You know, we sell it cheap, cheap as you possibly can, under those conditions, and they can eke a living out of it.
so that's the way that I would look at it, is that you helped a lot of people on the other end.
But exactly like that.
Well, I feel as though I helped some people get closer to God
Oh, the
too.
others, okay, yeah,
Like
because
the
I'm
Knights of
going down
Columbus, I
there.
worked real hard for 1 year. 1 year I got 33 members in the Knights of Columbus. Some of those guys.
Well, Larry, he's answering your question.
Okay, I'll get it for you.
For God.
We're gonna
He's
shoot for
good to
Tuesday
me.
morning then?
I make
Guess
a
so.
lot of foolish
Will you
mistakes.
call me if that's a problem?
Still,
Check your book when you get
overall
home.
picture. It worked out pretty well.
They're pretty lucky, you got good health,
Yeah.
that's very important.
No education, that's the biggest setback. That's why
10 o'clock at
when
the,
I was young, I realized
at
when I
the
was,
center.
before I was 20 years old, I realized
And it's at St.
I go to
Joseph's,
these
St.
grocery
Patrick, what's the
meetings,
name of
these
that church?
guys are smart. Most of them went to college.
It's
Yeah,
not
but
a
that's,
church, it's
you were street
well,
smart,
school on
that's,
Berg Street.
I'd rather be street smart than book
You,
smart.
you come in the parking lot, you go to
Like
the
Jay,
back
my
door.
brother Jay is
Attached
book
to the
smart,
church.
Yeah.
No,
but
it's
book
not-
smart,
Doesn't have the background, but
Next to
it's good to have both if you have, but if I had my choice between the two, of being street smart and book smart, I'd much rather be street smart.
I learned a lot. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I mean,
But I,
working in business is like,
Give the keys to your car when you
Family's here. We're having a beautiful party. Even Chris has got his fireplace going for me. Isn't it lovely? And he's going to bring this film for you, to see you. That you can see me, I mean, I guess. Yeah. I wish you were here with us. It's so beautiful having all the children and parents sitting around here, and it's been a beautiful day. Christmas Day. I'm sorry. I forget. Yeah. So how's things going with you today? Hope you've had a nice day before Christmas. Busy as usual. So, Chris wants me to say something about our when our childhood. And the only thing I can think of, do you remember the time you asked Mother, she was phoning, you asked Mother if you could paste pictures? I'm almost sure it was you. When we lived on 1215 Noy Street, and she's phoning and she just nods her head, yes, you can paste pictures. So when Dad comes home from work, he goes upstairs, he comes down again and said, who made the art gallery upstairs? And you had evidently pasted all funny pictures all around the bedroom, The whole room had to be repapered. Do you remember that? I can think of a lot of funny things. Remember one time we put boots on Irene, when she was a baby, and Mother wasn't there, and we were pulling their legs off, trying to take the boots off of her. I imagine you remember that. You remember things better than I do anyway. So, I'm trying to think of other funny things, but I can't just think of them right now, of course.
All right. First off, what year were you born
Here, he knows that, 1904,
in? In what city?
in Boston, Mass.
Uh-huh.
Really Dedham, I guess, outside of Boston.
You were born in Boston, okay.
Mhm.
At what date?
July 12th, 1904, yeah,
Uh-huh.
he remembers that.
Okay, and what's your first memory? Can you remember Boston, or?
No, I remember that when I was a baby, and I must have still lived in Boston, that they had a fire. I don't know if it was next door or not, but I've always been afraid of fires ever since then, and, because I can remember my father holding me, and he said to my mother, get all the jewelry out on the table, his watch or rings or whatever they had, and be ready to go any minute, because if the fireman would tell him to leave the house. So I've always had a fear of fires, and I think that's probably what it was, because I was only a little child, I know that. And also trains, but I don't know why I'm afraid of trains, but those are the only thing. I guess it's because I can't manipulate them. I can't have any control over them. Otherwise, most things don't bother me.
Okay.
So.
Well, was the house next door burning, or your house was burning?
No, it wasn't the house we lived in. No.
Or was it something in the neighborhood?
And
House
the
in the neighborhood?
neighbor. I imagine it was a house next door or something, because they probably were prepared to leave in case the fireman told them to get out. And so, yeah.
Mhm. And what was your mother's full name?
Anna Marie Hayes. Yeah.
And your father's full name?
Oh dear. Isaac Earl Beekman.
Uh-huh.
But he always wrote it I. Earl. Yeah, or the I. Earl.
Okay, and did your grandparents live in Boston too?
Oh no. We moved from Boston when I was about 6. I guess I was younger than 6, about 5.
Two.
To Yorkville, where my father built his first house.
Okay, where were your grandparents then?
They were in Sangerfield, or around that district anyway, at that time. Alan probably can tell you better than I can tell you, because he keeps track of those things. But I remember my father was, even as a child, well, that's where I first got bit by the dog, where we lived in Yorkville. And another incident I remember, I went out to feed the chickens. I was about 5, and I remember I took a little dog. We had a little dog, and this other little dog came around, and they started attacking my dog. And I took a long strip of, it was like wainscoting, I'd remember as a day, because it was limber. It must have been, it seemed like 12 feet long at the time. And I wanted to hit that little dog to get away from our dog, and I hit that dog, and then he came and jumped on me and bit me in my hand. And then eventually I had to go to New York for pasture treatments. And the needles seemed to be that long. Every day they put one on one side, the next day they put one on the other side. There was even babies there crying and everything. And so it was quite an experience. The first thing, because you know, I was young. I went to New York. I remember the trolley cars, and my grandmother came down from New Haven and stayed with my mother there. I don't remember even where we stayed. The only thing I remember is going to the doctors and all the children crying, and then I remember going to the breakfast in the morning. It seemed to be, I didn't want anything to eat, so the waiter was all dressed in like a gypsy outfit to me. He had a great big cummerbund on and a white shirt, you know, and he suggested that I have, would I like bananas and milk? Well, I had never had bananas and milk. So every day I had bananas and milk for breakfast anyway. So I've been fond of bananas ever since.
So, that's all all I remember about New York. I don't remember anything else. I suppose I was in a lot of pain all the while.
You remember
So-
traveling to Sanger Field to see your grandparents?
Oh, yes, I do,
How did you get there? By?
Oh, just by car,
Mhm.
yeah, by car.
Mhm.
I stayed with them a couple of times in the summer for a while. For
They
sure.
were your grandparents on your mother's side, or your
Father's side, yeah.
Uh-huh.
No, my grandfather on my mother's side is dead. After I was born, he wanted to go, I imagine he wanted to go back and tell the relatives he had a baby. He goes back to England and the boat was never heard from. So my grandmother was a widow all her life. She took in boarders. And when I was 12 years old and she died, my mother sent me across the street. She said, get their dinner. That's all she said. Get their dinner, and I'm 12 years old. They had all those men to feed, about 5 men, as I remember.
So your grandparents were from England?
And my grandmother was from Ireland, my grandfather was from England.
What was your grandmother's name on that side?
Oh dear. I can't even think what her name was. Her last name was Hayes, but I can't think of her first name, and, you know.
Was
I
it
always called her-
Catherine?
I guess it was Catherine, yeah, Catherine, but of course I always called her grandma, so I don't remember. But,
Now, where did that grandmother live? She lived.
well, she lived in the city, different places. She
In Utica?
Utica until she died. And then when she was dying, when she was just before the previous year dying, she lived in a 2-family house my father owned across the street from us.
This
on
is
High Street.
your mother's mother? You said before, I thought that she came down from New Haven.
That was when we were in New York.
She lived in New Haven then, but then she
Yeah.
moved to Utica later?
Yes,
She-
I don't know when, Betty. I don't
Uh-huh.
know.
How old were you when your grandmother died there?
I was 12.
When your grandmother
That's
passed away?
what I said. My mother sent me over there to get their meal, and imagine telling a 12-year-old child go over and cook for 5 men.
Your mother told you this?
Yeah, she told me go over and get their dinner.
Mhm.
And I always remember, I must have cooked something with beef because Lord knows what I cooked, I can't remember. But I remember that I didn't have any gravy bowl, and I put the gravy in a soup dish. And I remember one of the men saying, Hazel, what is this here? Very nicely to me. And I said, that's gravy, but I never forgot it. I was so embarrassed because it was, I didn't think of it. I just had it thin. It was just the juice of the beef. And but I was going to tell you, in Yorkville, a couple of things. One thing, my mother told me one time, there was ragmen used to always come through to buy things, to buy bottles and junk, And so he came to the house and he said, would you know if you got anything to sell, little girl? And I said, oh yes, we got something to sell. And so I brought him in and my mother says, he's standing there, my mother's there, and my mother says, no, he said, we don't have anything to sell. I said, oh yes, we do. And she says, no, he said, I can't think of a thing we got to sell. So what do we got to sell? I said, him, my brother.
Which brother was
Brother
that?
Alan?
Leon.
Yeah.
And so I liked him a lot.
How much were you willing to take?
Of course, they both stood there and laughed, I guess. I don't know. I don't remember that. I really wanted him to take him for some reason.
You were the oldest one,
I
right?
was the oldest, yeah. And then he was next, Leon was next,
So
yeah.
by that time, all the kids were born, right? And Alan was the youngest? He's
No, not that time. It was only Leon and I at that time. Leon was the baby that I wanted to sell.
Oh, okay, okay. I was getting back when you were 12 years old.
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Because Alan is how much younger than you? How many years?
Irene's the youngest.
Or
He
Irene.
told me today he's 80, so he's 8 years younger than I am.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
How much difference between you and Irene? She was the youngest.
There was 16 years.
Between the
Yeah.
oldest and the youngest.
She was the youngest, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And there was 10 between Doris and I. And,
So were you like Jay, where you had all this responsibility?
yes, indeed I did.
You got
No
a
matter
lot?
what they wanted me to do, they just said, do it. Imagine 12 years old, telling the child, go over and get their dinner for 5 people. Now, I often think of it. I didn't make any bones about it. I don't know where I found anything or anything else, but I went and did it anyway.
Mhm.
It's what you did when you were younger, Then another thing that happened in Yorkville, my father got up one morning and he had there was like a chest, a cedar chest under the window. Of course, he opened the window. There wasn't any houses around then at all, And he threw his pants there at night apparently, and he was robbed. Somebody made a little crutch with wood and held a screen up. You know, it was just those screens that fold back and forth. Held the screen up, and dragged out his pants and took the money, all the money he had. I guess he felt pretty bad.
Mhm.
So, because it was just getting started
Yeah.
then. You
How,
know.
how would you describe your family? Were you poor or middle class or average
Well,
or?
the only thing I can say, we always had enough to eat. You know, always had enough to eat. We always had a house to sleep in. You know, like
Mhm.
that. But no, we probably some people call them middle class. You know, but really was sort of poor in a way because I had one dress or something like that. You know,
Mhm.
and so when I was 13, I wasn't quite 14, I was home from school, and a girl used to walk down, he'd probably remember her, I think of her name now. Her name was Leah something, she came from up the road, on Hickory Street it was at, and she used to go down to work every day at 7 o'clock, and anyway I got acquainted with her. She was an older girl, she wasn't real old, but she was older than I, quite a little older than I did, and I talked with her and I thought, well, if I could get a job in the mill, and
Which mill was that?
mill number 6, and
Where was that at?
down on Erie Street, I guess, I can't even remember,
Mhm.
and it was down that way anyway, and it was the best of the mills, the number 6, I think, anyway, it was more modern or something, and so anyway, I asked my father, and he said no, I couldn't go to work, so I just cried for 2 weeks, and finally he said, let her go if she wants to go so bad. So at 13, I worked in the mill, and I know I was doing something at church. Oh, when I was probably in my 40s, about 40s, and some woman said to me, I never saw anybody use the scissors that way except somebody that worked in the mill, and I thought, well, that's where I learned it. And
So
she
what did you do in the mill?
said, the scissors, you use them by the ends. You don't use the handles at all. Use the ends.
For what?
You can make them go faster.
I mean, what did the mill make?
Well, I made knit goods, and I was on piecework, and I cut cuffs on a machine, the cuffs that go on the bottom of men's underwear.
Mhm.
And they told me I was the first one that ever got the cutters out of work. I worked so fast and so steadily, and the 2 men upstairs that did the cutting work, they had to cut up the part of the underwear for me to sew the cuffs on. I had to go up there and stand there and wait till they did some cutting. They were surprised. So the boss wanted me to stay and not go back to school. But at least they had brains enough to go back to the Highlands to go back to school.
Remember how much you were making an hour?
No, I made about $15 a week, and that was supposed to be big pay.
For how many hours? Is that a full week?
I know you had to be there at 7 o'clock or 7 or 7:30, and I don't know. I can't remember because Lord, I was so young.
Weren't you going to school then?
I was going to high school. I
Yeah.
was, and well, I was 14. I would be 14 in July, but I worked a month or so before I was 14. He would have got fined $500, and I don't know, 6 months or a year in jail for hiring somebody like that. You know, at the time, and but he didn't want me to go back to school at all. He wanted me to stay, and at least I had sense enough to go back to school.
Mhm.
So I went back to school.
What school were you going to?
Academy. I'd go to Academy then, high school. See, I was 14. I just graduated from Kernan School.
What's the academy? UCA?
It's a high school, yeah. I guess so.
On the hill there?
On Hobart Street.
Oh, on Hobart Street.
Yeah,
Okay.
Hobart Street, yeah.
Okay. And where were you living then?
Lived on Hickory Street, 1217.
1217 Hickory?
Hickory Street, yeah.
Can you remember your address in Yorkville?
No, I don't. There wasn't anything near us at all. I tried once to find out, and they said I'd have to talk with some of the men in the Yorkville, some of the men that are
Yeah,
in
older.
politics there up there, to go up there to find out, you know.
Is
but
that
I never got time to go up there, it seemed.
Is the Hickory Street still standing, the house?
No, it's Noy Street now.
Oh, it's Noy Street, okay.
They wanted, the men came up from the city of Utica, politicians, and wanted to name the street after my father, but for some reason he didn't want them to.
Mhm.
He was like that, he didn't really want publicity like I don't like it very well.
Mhm.
And he said no, but it would have been nice, Beekman Street would have been kind of nice, I thought. No, they made it Noy Street all the way through now.
Did you get along better with your mother or your father?
Well, I don't know. I think I think I got along better with my father. My mother never said very much. She was brought up in a convent. She was very quiet, he did all the chastising and everything else anyway. Oh dear.
What, your dad did?
Mm.
Why, did you get chastised a lot?
Maybe verbally. What he said it once, just said it once, and boy, you better believe it. You better believe it. Oh dear.
What happens if you had to say it twice?
I don't know. I think I know it had some punishment. I remember anyway, for sure. Did, yeah. But there was a lot of funny things that do happen, but I can't remember them all. Lots of things. I know I cleaned out those. My brothers had, the three of them slept upstairs, the end of the front of the house, just like a dormitory room. They had 3 beds in there, and they had a great big closet. And they used to collect so much junk. To me, it was junk. So one Saturday, I thought, I'm going to outsmart them. They went out, so I cleaned that whole closet out. It took me all morning. Got the stuff all out in front, and hoping and praying that the Ashmen would come before they'd come home. They come home just before the Ashmen, and they brought it all straight back in. I remember that.
Why do you call them Ashmen
That's what we used to call them. Because it was ashes, coal ashes.
in those days?
In those days, they called them
Uh-huh.
ashes.
Which of your brothers or sisters was the biggest troublemaker?
Oh, Lord. Gee, I don't really know. They just argued about themselves. They didn't do much, or my father. My father used to say, 1 boy is a boy, 2 boys are no boy at all. I was at 2 boys are only half a boy, and 3 boys are no boy at all. And if one of them, they got in trouble, the whole 3 got punished. The whole 3. He never asked who was wrong or who was right. The whole 3 got punished. Anyway, yeah. So I don't know. I was always so busy, and I was busy doing things too. One Christmas, people that my father bought lumber from, Woodbury, what was it, Waterbury's, and he brings him a box of cigars. They were so stingy anyway. Waterbury's were. They were terrible. They really put him in bankruptcy in the end. He brought him a box of cigars, a salesman, and he takes it and puts it in. I had a roll top desk, and he puts a box of cigars there, and he fixes. He's fussing. I was near there. I was going to clean up the hall, and this right off the office, and I was watching him. He was fussing with the box, and he fussed, and he fussed. Just so he was giving him like $1 million. You think of a box of cigars, you know. I don't know how much they cost at that time, but anyway, he fixed it. So when he went out, I went in and I read the note, and he had a note there, you know, from Waterbury's. So I put a lot of X's on it at the time, so I knew what X's meant, and the license you're talking about. So anyway, of course I didn't expect him to come back at all. Of course he came back again. And he goes back and he starts arranging the box, and he looks down at the note. Oh, was he mad when he saw those X's down there? So I had a big joke out of that anyway. So my father, of course, would know who did that. It was one time some of us girls got together. There was a letter we put out. Somebody wrote. It had, it was about 5 pages of stationery paper, and I don't know, of course, those years you used to wear long underwear, whether you wanted to or not. I know my father, one day I come down to wash my hands, and I was singing, he says, "Where's your underwear?" Of course I had a black blouse on, but I had it rolled up, and he didn't see the underwear. And he said, "Where's your underwear?" Get back upstairs. It had to be on until April 15th, I think you had to wear your long underwear.